Hello and welcome back to what I wished I'd known about self-publishing before I got started. I am Karlie with Dragon Key Press. I would like to apologize in advance for the sound quality. I am not using my usual computer because it is out for repairs. Today we are going to talk about launch parties. Now, there are two different types of launch parties that you can go with. You can go with a virtual party, which you kind of see, I pulled up a website for here, or there is an actual in-person kind of that you can do as well. Now, the main reasons you have a launch party, as Kindlepreneur kind of puts up there, is to celebrate. Yay, you wrote a book, you got it published. Fantastically awesome. This also is a way to help build word of mouth through direct interactions with potential fans and customers, especially if you're first starting out. They're still just potential, but if you already have a bit of a fan base, it helps to actually promote and get them excited, and word of mouth, even though a lot of people say it's underdone and all that, it actually has a lot of good ways to help you. Parties are social media gold. I mean, if you carefully document your party with photos and things like that, should you be doing it in person, then you can post those things all over social media and show people how wonderful it is and how much fun people have with this and how much support you have for this book. If you're doing it online, then of course you have that whole aspect where people can just tune in from wherever. But it's also fun. I mean, parties, hello, what's not to like about a party, unless you're a total party pooper, which, not everybody likes parties. But do you have to have a launch party for your book? The answer is no, you do not. This is kind of something, if you can afford to do it, or you have the time and means to put one together, by all means go for it. Now, during a certain period of the not too distant past, there was pretty much no in-person launch parties whatsoever. Even now, in-person launch parties are probably more likely to be set up by a publisher or your public representative, PR, blah, 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 blah. But either way, there are definitely some things that need to be done for either a virtual online launch party or an in-person launch party. And that includes picking a date. This is probably not going to be the date you actually publish your book, unless you're doing a virtual launch party, in which case, unless you have pre-sales, this is you promoting your book and saying, hey, please buy my book while you're here chilling and having games and chatting with me online. If you're doing it in person, it's best to actually have books you can sell in person while you are there. But pick a date that's going to be convenient, that is going to give you plenty of time to plan and prep, or whoever you may hire to do so has the time to plan and prep. That includes picking your venue, getting any things you may need put together, and make sure that it's pretty much in a place that's going to be, populated. Sorry, brain dying a little here. And that's the number 2, is picking your venue. If you are doing this in person, then you're going to be doing this in a physical brick and mortar, as we call it, store or coffee shop or other venue, or you can even do it in your own home if you feel like you can and you have a place big enough to do some semblance of a party or something like that. Or you could do it at a public park. But wherever you go, you need to make sure that you are following any rules they have, paying any fees, deposits, etc. As it's unlikely you can do most in-person venues for free, but it's not impossible for things like that to happen. Sometimes you can actually do launch parties in bookstores or local businesses who have some kind of tie to the genre category or subject matter of your book, might be interested in letting you do a launch in their business as a means to bring in more business for them while helping you out. So don't dismiss the possibility that things could be potentially free or low costing if you decide to do this in person. Obviously, if you're doing it at home, you're not paying a venue fee, but that also isn't as professional unless you've got one of those really fancy schmancy houses, in which case you could probably pay somebody to get this all set up for you, unless you're in mountains of debt. But if you're willing to shell out that little bit of extra for a nice venue, go for it. But try not to break the bank when you're doing this, because there's no guarantee people will buy your book and you'll become a gazillionaire overnight. So keep that in mind. You're going to want a budget, and that's going to have to include your venue price, as well as any other things that you have in there, giveaway items, food, etc. Now, if you are going for either, you are probably going to want to find some kind of volunteers to help you get things set up, figured out, etc. Because let's face it, as it says in here, the book launch itself is probably not going to make a lot of money on its own. So you're probably not going to be able to pay for any entertainment, catering, etc., which means you're going to need people who are willing to give their own time and talents to help you with this stuff. If you have money you can spend in the budget for this, go for it. And remember, a budget is not just about money, but it's about the time you have available, resources you may have available that don't include money, as well as mental, emotional resilience and so forth. So keep that in mind when you're putting out a budget for all this. Kindlepreneurs suggest you look for friends and family members who might volunteer and help out. Do you have a brother-in-law who likes to take pictures, or a sister-in-law, or a friend, or somebody? They might be willing to be a photographer for you, so you have this kind of stuff for your social media platforms. Now, the biggest thing, of course, once you've got your venue and kind of those little details figured out, is actually inviting people. So once you know your date, once you know where you're going, and you hopefully have at least a deposit put down on where you're having this if you need a deposit, you need to start letting people know this is a thing. Start with the community you may have. Even if you are not yet an established author, you can use people that you know to invite them. Family, friends, people from church, people from work, people you just know in general who might be potentially interested in what you have been doing for who knows how long in your garage, typing away at your computer while you figure out how to get everything put together. If you are not having a private event, which means you're probably not doing it at your home, advertise your book launch everywhere. On social media, post-it boards, in the gym, grocery store, wherever you possibly can. And, if you have a really big budget, you could even try radio or newspaper ads or things like that. Make sure you announce it on social media. And if you have an email newsletter, be sure to include it in that. If you're doing it in person, there's no guarantee people can actually come, but if you give them enough notice, they might even come from out of town for things like this. And again, if you are doing this in person, provide some kind of refreshments. They're going to come and they're not going to expect to just kind of sit there and mingle and look at you and go, yay, congrats. They're just not. They're going to expect something for their effort of coming in there. So you should have some kind of food and drinks available. This does not mean you have to go out and buy champagne and caviar or things like that. But if you expect a large group, just kind of plan accordingly. There are a lot of catering services you can look at if you have to, depending on the venue. Some venues require to have a professional caterer, so keep that in mind. Some of them might have a catering service that they use or are associated with for their business, or if it's a coffee shop, they might expect you to buy a certain amount of their product as refreshment for your guests. So these are things you need to keep in mind. If you're doing a private event, obviously you can do it bake sale style or however fancy you want. But keep in mind, this is part of your budget, how much you're going to spend on refreshments. And you want to have enough for anybody who comes to at least get something to nibble on, because it's no fun going to a party and there's nothing there to nibble on. Tip number 7 is set up a book table. I mean, come on, this is about you launching your book. You need to present that book so that it is pretty much there and show off and woohoo, here's the book, woohoo, doesn't it look awesome? They suggest a multi-tiered table or multiple tables in which you can put multiple copies of your books in case people want to purchase them on site. Suggest doing it at a discount if they're willing to come all the way out to support you with a yay, it's here, woohoo kind of party thing. But they do not recommend giving your books away for free, other than perhaps as a giveaway raffle drawing type thing where, they can put their name in the little hat and then at the end you can pull their name out. It's a little different when you're doing it online, and I'll get into that whole online differences in a minute. But just keep in mind, you spend a lot of time, effort, potentially a lot of money putting that book together, getting it written, edited, formatted, and finally published. You should not be giving this away for free. Ebooks, they're kind of different, but the physical copies, by all means, sell them at a discounted rate from what it's going to be online or in store, but you should receive something for your efforts other than a pat on the back and a, yay, you did it! Now, they suggest you have a speech ready. A good chunk of your book launch is going to be devoted to you, but don't be up there like the big show-centering, woohoo, look at me, look at me, look at me, because, nobody likes a narcissist. But this is also to celebrate you, so kind of be humble about it, but your attendees are going to want to learn a little bit more about you and your book. What it's about, maybe the process, any tips or tricks for people who may or may not want to do this themselves. Have those answers handy, but not, I'm going to just give you a dissertation on how this all happened, because, nobody wants to sit there and, oh, yeah, what? I'm awake, They want to hear the details without too much detail. So have a couple of topics on hand that you can talk about and try to keep it exciting. And by all means, gauge your audience when you are interacting with them because, while they are there to celebrate you and your success, there is such a thing as excess and overdoing it. So just keep that in mind. Now, they suggest you prepare an interview if you want to take things to the next level. Ask someone to interview you in front of your attendees so that you can answer questions that you might not have thought of on your own. When you're doing an online type of launch, it actually is a little different, and I'll go into that details in there. And then a very popular part of doing in-person launch parties is having a bit of a book reading. Obviously, if your book is a novel, you're not going to sit there and read the whole thing. Nobody's going to sit there and listen to you read the whole thing. If they were going to do that, they would get an audiobook. But it is appropriate to actually read snippets from your book to kind of get the audience excited about actually reading the book. This is more of a tease, 1, maybe 2 pages of a woohoo part of your book that makes people go, okay, what happens next? And it's okay to have several snippets ready on hand just in case. Now, it is also strongly encouraged that you actually have a book signing. If you're going to have your books out there ready to sell, you might as well actually sign them. And there may be people who have bought your book in advance, especially if it's available in advance, who may want you to actually sign it there in person. So be sure to have copies of the book they can buy on hand that you can sign, or even some that you may have pre-signed, and then you can just kind of personalize as necessary. But this is a great opportunity for you to mingle with your potential fan base and help solidify that you are a wonderful, awesome person who, is somebody worth getting to know. And hey, celebrity, woohoo, I know somebody famous, And don't be afraid to mingle with your attendees because, that's why you're there. You're there to spend time, talk with people, answer questions, thank them for being there, take photos and videos, and just be social. Just make sure when everything's said and done, send thank you notes where possible. Obviously, it's not going to be possible to send them to every single person who may or may not have attended, especially if you're in a large venue. But if it's a private event, definitely make sure you send everybody who got there a thank you. But you can also say, hey, thanks for coming on social media, so keep that in mind. And then, of course, use any videos, photography, etc. that you may have gotten from the events to help promote your books online, on your website, on social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Just remember, do not hog the spotlight, do not give your books away for free, and do not spend too much money. Other than that, party on. Now, there has definitely been a rise in virtual book tours or book launches, and those are honestly the only kinds I've done. But you can either host them yourself, or you can find a third-party company who will host it for you, and you just give them the details and they do all the work. But those ones you definitely have to pay for. If you are not having a third party do it and you are doing it yourself, you can host it on Zoom, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, YouTube Live. There's so many new and wonderful options out there with doing it online that you can use to do it online as an interactive kind of thing. The ones I've done have actually been in a Facebook group setting where everybody just uses their keyboard and types, or maybe pops onto Messenger to talk vocally. You know, nothing too fancy, but if you do it on the Facebook with the posts and stuff, it's actually so much easier to just pop on there with, hey, here's this, here's that, here's these, blah, 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 blah. And usually I've had kind of games or things like that that the person I have hosting it for me will put up every so many minutes to keep people interacting and things like that. But just with everything else, you will need to worry about promotion. Promotion, promotion, promotion. That is one of the biggest things that you need to make sure after you've decided where you're going to do it, where you're going to host it, online, whatever platform you're using, as well as the date. Schedule it on your publication date, the evening of if you're doing it on the publishing date, or later in the month. Just don't go too much later if possible. Consider which day of the week might be best for anybody you might be networking in, and if possible, do a 4 to 6 week woohoo, get people excited and remind them through social media posts, etc. about this happening. Don't forget, newsletters are also very powerful in this, but you should have at least a week of, hey, it's coming, hey, it's coming. But they say it's probably best between 4 to 6 weeks to give people plenty of time to make sure they can actually be online during the event, or if not, they can support you in other ways. Create a Facebook event so people can RSVP, share details there if you need to, offer opportunities to sign up to receive email reminders, and if you're using links to like Zoom or things, you can send the link in there. Test the events and any slideshow presentations if you have them, especially if it's a venue you're not used to using. And here it's okay to give away books and other things because you're not actually actively selling them at the venue because it's all online, but you are also encouraging them to go and buy their own. So it's okay to throw in a book or two for free as part of, you know, a drawing or prizes for games. Just don't, oh, hey, you get a book and you get a book and everybody gets a book. Yeah, don't do that. Your work is worth more than just a free sample at the local grocery store. But use your social media content to highlight what participants can expect. Games, giveaways, blah, 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 etc. And yes, by all means, use giveaways. It doesn't have to be a copy of your book. It can be different prizes like branded mugs, bookmarks, fun little things that you have made at home. I have actually done resin casting of my logo for one of my books, and I gave away pendants with that. Lots of popular things are things like keychains or some items that are associated with the book. One book launch, I actually gave away cookie jars because it was a book about cookies. Things like that. Planning, of course, is going to be a big thing. This article is going off it as if you are doing your own hosting, which you might end up doing, but make your internet connection stable. Make sure that's happy, good. You don't want to drop out in the middle of nowhere. I've actually had that happen on Facebook where things glitched up and I kind of got kicked out of the event for like a good 5-10 minutes. I was like, oh crap, things happen. So, kind of keep that in mind. Create a presentation if you want, a slideshow with appealing graphics to keep people engaged. Do a game themed off of your book and its contents, like every 10 minutes, depending on how long you're planning on doing your party. And then people who enter your little games can get drawn for a prize. But if you can, encourage pre-sales and things like that. So, people could say, yeah, woohoo, can't wait for it, things like that. You're going to want a timeline of events. I mean, you're going to kind of tweak this as you can. Share a welcoming message if you're the host, or if somebody else is hosting, they'll do that. Hopefully we'll have a general area where people can just post questions in general for the author to answer, you the author. You as the author, even if you're not hosting, should greet people. If you have a short excerpt of your book that you want to share, by all means. This is not a hard, set, fast kind of thing that you actually have to do. But a brief Q&A is always nice. If you're doing a video type launch, having people able to, if on Zoom, either raise their hand like, you're doing at class and say, hey, I have a question, and then they can pop in their audio, say, hey, here's my question, pop off the audio so that you can answer, things like that. If you're doing it on the Facebook event page like I'm used to, they can just type it in the question, and then you can type in your answer. I mean, one of the games we used to do when I would do that is, what questions do you have? And then they'd have like 10 minutes to put their questions, and then while they went on to another game, I would go back in and try to answer as many of them as I could. But everybody who entered a game got in or asked questions was able to have their name put in for a drawing for certain prizes. Just remember, at the end of the event, share any final thanks and goodbyes. After all, they didn't have to come to your launch party. Display any amazing logos and blah 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 that you might have, and most definitely share links. Here it suggests your Amazon link, but if you have it at other venues, you can actually share where you can buy this. Barnes & Noble, ebook venues, or whatever website you prefer them to go to buy your book, even if it's from your own personal website. Go here to buy my book, blah blah blah, thanks so much for coming to my launch party. Here's where you can buy my book, I hope you enjoy it. And then you can also plug at this point, please leave an honest review. Asking them to leave a review is not the same as saying, I'll pay you money, which Amazon says no to. So this is a great place to actually go out and say, hey, can you please, if you buy my book, leave a review. Now, there are definitely ways to adapt it, so don't feel like you have to stick to any set way of any of this stuff. This is just one person's idea of how an online book can go. There are actually different places online where you can actually have them do the launch party for you. Silver Dagger Book Tours is one out there. There used to be, the one I used to use is no longer in action because the lady in charge had things happen in her life that made it impossible for her to keep that up. But there are places you can go if you just go on Google and look. But in a nutshell, that's launch parties for your book. Not necessary, fun if you can handle it and do it and afford it, but a lot of people do them, a lot of people don't do them. I've done them and I've not done them, depending on the book, and sometimes I just want to get it out there and I don't care. But This can be part of your book launch and launch you into things like a book tour, book signings, etc., which I will cover in a totally different video. Anyway, I hope you have learned something new, even though I did kind of just paraphrase somebody else's stuff and with my own kind of 2 cents added in there. But, yeah, book launches. Fun. Great way to engage, but not necessary if you can't afford it. I hope you learned something new. I am Karlie with Dragon Key Press. I do hope to see you next time, and hey, if you like the content, like, share, subscribe, because you know you want to. I'll see you next time, guys.